So we're talking about open source things. There's a lot of open source tools that do these things in the field of the archives. One of them is the New Zealand National Library metadata extractor. I've used it before. It's pretty nice to work with. It takes out file information that's not descriptive in nature, like the title, when it was changed, who the author was, assuming that the author information in, let's say, a Microsoft Word document is correct. I don't know how many people have checked on their own computers, or if you've ever tried to print something out and you look at the author as your department, right? If that's your office computer, or let's say somebody uses, the author uses his son's computer, right? Then now you have some questionable metadata, right, for the author. But it's something that the metadata extractor can take out. It's from the New Zealand National Library, and it's a fantastic tool. Another tool is file format recognition. Droid, Jove, those two are tools that will let you figure out if you have a big dump of files, what the files are. Is it an Adobe Photoshop file? Which version of Adobe Photoshop is it? What the date of creation was for that. They both come from two different projects. Droid comes from the National Archives in the United Kingdom. Jove comes from Harvard. And Droid tells you characteristics of the electronic record you're working with according to the file type. And Jove actually tells you the characteristics of the file itself. It's a little bit more exact. And FITS is a combination of both of those, and the New Zealand National Library metadata extractor. So all of this already, we have a bunch of disparate tools that some people are kind of pulling together. And notice this will be a theme that we'll get to a little bit more. Another tool is Xena. I think it comes from Australia. It's a file normalization tool. So it will take your file that's in Microsoft Word and turn it into an open office file or a file in ODT, and will also extract XML metadata related to that. Then you have converters like OpenOffice Converter or ImageMagick. Those two are just examples. ImageMagick is a tool that allows you to convert, especially by command line, which is nice. They also have a GUI interface. But ImageMagick lets you convert images. So let's say you have a bunch of JPEGs, and you want to save those as, maybe you want to save those as JPEG 2000s. That might be something with ImageMagick. There's as many migrators as there are file types that could be migrated, so that's just a very small list. Additionally, there's that tool, the algorithms and the tools that run files through an algorithm, Jetsam, MD5, and SHA-256. Those last two are both algorithm types, but they're also tools that convert to that. There's a virus scan, which is ClamAV. File listing tool, you can imagine you could just do that on your computer itself, a directory command or a list all command. You can also use a million open source tools that will do that for you. And then if you want to create all the metadata and put it into a package that can be ingested into a digital repository, Baggett is one of the tools for that. But if you have a big collection, an entire hard drive that somebody's given you who would like to work with each individual file, and you want to run each one of those tools on all of those files, that's a lot of steps. And it's time consuming. So there's a way to break up all those activities into independent components. And they're already kind of in those independent components. But combining them together in one system that uses microservices. Enter Archivematica. This is an open source tool that is developed by Artifactual Systems. It's a company based out of Vancouver. And it's relatively new. I think they only have about 30 people testing their software right now. It's in an alpha stage. But it's pretty advanced. This tool is free and open source as well. It's based on the GPL Creative Commons. It's a digital preservation system that's designed to maintain standard-based long-term access to collections of digital objects. Standard-based means open archival information system. That's the big standard. It uses this microservices design to provide the integrated suite of software into one tool that allows users to process the digital objects in compliance with And users can control and monitor the microservices from the web-based dashboard. Now, they can decide whether or not they want to use the MD5 algorithm or the SHA-256 algorithm and change up which microservices are implemented for their digital archives. They use a number of metadata standards, METS, premise, and Dublin core. Dublin core is probably the most familiar to this audience, but METS and premise are both very useful for the preservation plan. And they implement media type preservation plans based on analysis of the significant characteristics of the file formats. What that means is a particular file format has something unique, or there's an essence to it, the file itself, that would require maintenance for long-term preservation. Now, of course, all of this is based on the file type. Even though different organizations might have different needs for file types. For instance, if I'm working with manuscript archives and a book has been written in Microsoft Word, I'm really interested in track changes as a user of this manuscript material. So a manuscript archives might not feel that open document format is enough to keep the significant characteristics or the significant properties of a file. If I work for government archives, all I'm interested is in the final product. Tracking changes might actually be a really bad thing to make available to the user. So each institution will have to figure out how to implement these preservation plans based on file format type. Not only in terms of what the whole institutional process is, but also what the file type is in itself, or what the user of the collection might be. So there's a number of open source tools that are integrated, and most of them I have mentioned. Let's see if we can get in that action. If not, it's okay. We saw Bagot, that's a Library of Congress tool. ClamAV. There's a migration tool for raw camera images to digital negatives. Digital Collection Builder is a web-based collection and description and access tool. We'll actually talk about that in a second. Document Converter normalizes files through OpenOffice. FITS we read about. There's a number of ways that they work with email. Hypermail is one of them. And then I think Read PST or Read Post is another one. ImageMagick, with a K. It's a typo on my slide. I also, the other problem with this presentation is I use PowerPoint. I feel like a heretic, but I like using PowerPoint. ICA Atom is the descriptive tool, MD5. You just see that there's a lot of open source tools that they use. This UUID is a tool that creates that unique universal